Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome back to the channel. This is United versus Everybody. I am your host, Sean, and we got a bit of breaking news today that I want to get everyone's thoughts on. Imagine my surprise, imagine your surprise waking up this morning to the news that Manchester United have sacked Dan Ashworth, our director of football, sporting director, technical director, whatever you want to call him. He is no longer with the club. Big news today. We're going to talk a lot about that. I want your thoughts on that. I want your opinions. We are going to talk about the match. Obviously, I wasn't planning on doing the video this early. It was going to be a little later on, but I decided to go ahead and jump on it now before the matches started and everything. Plus, I think that we just want to get it out of the way, right? But a lot of big news going on today. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, get involved in the chat. We are on the road to 2K subscribers, so let's hopefully get there sometime soon for you guys, so you guys can get that next giveaway. But let's talk about the news because it is all kicking off today, and I know you guys are itching to share your thoughts. So, breaking news today, like I said, the club have sacked Dan Ashworth. Sports predictions. Good morning, my friend. I am good, man. I'm a little bit in shock, and I think it's shock that is laced with just like frustration, like disappointment. I've been shaking my head like this like all morning working on some of the show, but it's been insane. Box, good morning, man. How are you? Good to see you. It is a bit of a clown show right now, man. But let me read the official club statement, which won't take long because it's probably one of the shortest club statements I've ever seen. But it says, Dan Ashworth will be leaving his role as sporting director of Manchester United by mutual agreement. Is there ever such thing as mutual agreement? We would like to thank Dan for his work and support during a transitional period for the club and wish him well for the future. That is a weird final sentence there, if you ask me. It makes it sound like they're trying to like save face by saying like he was here during a transition period or something. Like, we spent months chasing this guy. He was on gardening leave. We went back and forth with Newcastle about compensation, all this stuff. To bring him in later on in the transfer window, which you guys know if you've been following the channel was a huge frustration for me, is how long it took us to get him in. And then we turn around and sack him 5 months later. There were reports yesterday from Laurie Whitwell, I think it was, who said that after the match against Forest, which we're going to talk about a little later, Ashworth was seen kind of rushing through the media area, his head down, no eye contact, didn't really say anything. He kind of looked a little down. And I wanted to say something about that yesterday if had I gone live, but that to me, obviously very telling. You guys let me know. Sports Fiction says, I think I'm one of the few who aren't really tripping about this. I'm not tripping, like worried, like necessarily, like, what are we going to do? This guy's falling kind of thing. It's such a bad look for INEOS, in my opinion. First, they sacked Erik ten Hag after he got a new contract, and now after 5 months, Dan Ashworth leaves after we spent all summer, like I said, fighting to get him. I mean, the guy was on gardening leave longer than he was here, almost like, and so it's just not a good look. What the ins and outs of it are on a deeper level is anyone's guess, but it just doesn't look good. The optics aren't great. And it's just really frustrating. And Box says, yeah, that's the embarrassing part. It is super embarrassing, man. It's so weird. Box says, club statement acting like he's Matt Hargreaves or Valley on interim basis. Yeah, it was a very kind of just cookie cutter kind of basic statement real quick. So I get that INEOS, they did a lot to implement a recruitment structure, right? That was one of the things they really wanted to come in. They were pushing hard on cost cutting, pushing hard on planning new stadium, and pushing hard on getting a new structure. And that was kind of the big three areas they were trying to do. But you just sacked a big part of that recruitment structure especially on the back of a bad result at home. Again, that's why I'm saying the optics don't look good when you start adding it all together. What could Ashworth have possibly done to kind of to lead to this decision? What maybe went into this? So I've seen some reports today that Sir Jim wasn't happy that Ashworth was a big proponent of keeping Ten Hag in the summer. I've seen it claimed that Ashworth wanted Gareth Southgate. He's very English focused when it comes to players and managers, which Sir Jim is apparently they didn't agree with, and Dave Brailsford and Barada didn't agree with. I've also seen reports that Ashworth and Omar Barada just didn't get along. I've seen reports that Ashworth was kind of being pushed to the sideline of decisions, and a lot of decisions were being made without him or that he didn't agree with, such as appointing Ruben Amorim, which I guess he was not in support of. I guess if he's not a fan of where the club's going, and if he's the one outlying voice who's not really on board, I guess you do kind of have to decide, hey, are you actually going to be going in the same direction? It's like paddling like a whitewater raft. Everyone's got to be paddling in the same direction, or else it just kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. So if somebody's not paddling in the same direction, they might need to be pushed out of the raft. I don't know. But if that's the case, if he's not on board with it, then the position really is sort of untenable in that regard, if you ask me. Sports Prediction says, I feel bad for Dan, but I think Sir Jim is trying to get the best people in charge of recruiting. So I'm so sad for Dan, though. But that's the point, man. We spent months getting Dan Ashworth because he was who we were trying to get. He was supposed to be one of the best, and we've already sacked him. It doesn't make sense to me. And again, kind of like the issues with Ten Hag and stuff, and even some of the stuff I've said about some of Ruben Amorim's decisions, the whys don't matter. The reasons don't matter as much. This just makes us look like Bach said, makes us look like clowns. It makes us look like a laughing stock this morning. I'm trying to give INEOS the benefit of a doubt because of what they inherited and what they really have to do. They really have to just knock everything down and try to start over again. And I get that. But at the same time, it doesn't look good. To a degree, I agree with the philosophy of walking to the right decision rather than running to the wrong one. I even agree to an extent with, correcting decisions that they themselves make, if they're the wrong decisions, doing that before it's too late. I get that. But the issue that I start to have, and it's the same with the Glazers and Woodward when it came to how many managers, it gets to a point where if you're making so many bad decisions, you start to question the decision making itself, the people making the decisions. We can sit here and say we've sacked this many managers, but those managers were all appointed by the same people. If I hire people that just keep doing a horrible job, eventually people are going to stop looking at the people I'm hiring and firing and start looking at me and my decision making. So again, the issue is more about the poor decisions being made than anything else. Sacking Ten Hag after giving him a new contract. The ticket price issue is a big deal, and now this. So yeah, it's a little interesting. It's just quite a bit of interesting, arguably poor decisions in a very short period of time. There was a fine line, in my opinion, between being ruthless and being, reactionary. And time will tell which side of that line Sir Jim and his team fall on. But it's very interesting. Bach says it's not ideal. Firstly, Eric Ten Hag out in November, Ashworth out in December, mid-season sackings. It is not ideal because now, Bach, we're in a situation where we don't have a director of football, which is really nothing new for United fans. We're very used to not having a director of football, right? But I worry that this decision, is it going to hinder any business we had planned for January? Is it going to hinder any progress that we're already planning for the summer window? Because as we're going to talk about a little later, we do need to start improving things a little bit to help Amorim. We can't bring him in and then just not help him a little bit. And honestly, as a modern club, as a big club trying to get with the times, we need a director of football. We've gone very long without one. We finally got one, and he's supposed to be one of the best. If you look up, the top directors of football on any site you look at, Dan Ashworth is in the top 10. It just is what it is. He's not a bad director of football. But we have to look at replacements. And so it's just another distraction, another setback that we didn't need. Big up, Darko. How are you this morning, my guy? Good to see you. So who do we get? That's the thing. Now we're doing a transfer video on directors of football, right? Maybe we can coax Ralph Ragnick to come back and let him do the job he was hired for in the first place. He is among the best when it comes to directors of football. Maybe we can go get Michael Zorc out of retirement. That guy, remember, if you recognize him, he was with Borussia Dortmund for so long. He was pretty much pivotal in their success, the way he identifies young talent and brings them into a club and then flips them, similar to what you see at Brighton and whatnot. Luis Campos at PSG also has a great eye for young players. He was instrumental in Monaco and Lille's success in their title-winning seasons just by those kind of players. So I hope we don't spend too much time looking at these to where it takes away from what we're trying to do in terms of transfers and planning and recruitment and all that, because it is an absolute joke. Glad you're good, my guy. Good to see you. Don't forget to hit that like button if you haven't yet, you guys. And so again, like I said, sports predictions. I've just been like doing this like all morning. I woke up, got my coffee, let the dogs out and everything, came downstairs, open up the computer to start working, open up my phone, and this is the first thing I see. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I want to know what you guys think. Are you guys worried about the decision? I know somebody, sports prediction said he's not stressing about it. Are you worried about INEOS? Has this changed your opinion of INEOS at all, and Sir Jim and his team in terms of their decision making? Are they reacting rather than responding? Are they making too many bad decisions in your eyes, or is this just a case of just it is what it is? You guys let me know what you think. Get involved in the chat because it is some crazy news right now, man. Darko, so we're officially in crisis both on and off the field. I don't know if I'd say we're in crisis. It's just, it doesn't look good. It's definitely not a good look for us today. Got a string of a couple bad results on the pitch. We've got some ticket price issues, sacking Ten Hag and stuff, and now this. It doesn't look good. And I think it was always going to be a case of it's probably going to get a little worse before it gets better when they came in. Bach says, could be a master strokes, but seems reactionary at the moment. Yeah, I think the juxtaposition of the bad result and then this does, again, this the optics. It doesn't look good. And that's basically what I've been saying. Like, again, all we can do is react to what we're seeing without trying to dig deep and speculate, because we don't know as much as obviously the club does, but it doesn't look good, does it? So Bach says, although reports suggest almost from day one they were butting heads. Yeah, that's why I said like he and Barada. I think that this was probably always going to be inevitable with such a big recruitment team. Guys like Barada, Brailsford, Jean-Claire Blanc, all these guys involved in the process. There was always going to be a case, I think, where somebody's going to be the outlier. And then, I mean, you see it in any walk of life, whether it's friends, business, whatever, it's teams. Eventually it's that person is typically the one that kind of gets left behind a little bit. But big up, Rich. How are you? He says, if he's the wrong appointment, probably best to part ways sooner than later. I mean, and that's what I said, Rich. Like, to an extent, I agree with, correcting decisions, mistakes if they are wrong. But the problem for me is now this is a string of these kind of decisions that have been made under INEOS. The Ten Hag extending the contract and then turn around and sack him, and spending all those months fighting for Ashworth and then getting him here and then sacking him 5 months later it doesn't look good. I'll say that. Have we hit the bottom yet? Try not to panic. Again, we're all just here to react to this and share the thoughts. I'm trying not to panic on it. Like I said a few moments ago, I think it was always going to be a case of things were going to get a little worse before they started getting better, because that's just what has to happen. It's like I tell some clients sometimes when it comes to fixing some stuff, it's kind of like imagine like when the Glazers were pointing, like we broke our leg, right? But like we didn't fix it right. We didn't go to the hospital. All right. It'll heal on its own, like a little bit, but it won't heal right. It'll always be a little painful, and it will hinder us on a day-to-day basis. And like 18 years later, you want to go back and fix that, you have to re-break it. And it's not going to be fun, but that's how you get it to heal properly. That's just the way it is. But Box says, no, still time. So you're just a glass half full kind of guy today, aren't you, Box? Rich throwing out the love to everybody. I appreciate that. So again, let me know. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the Forest match. Like I said, I was going to save that for later, but I'm just going to combine it all today. But feel free to keep getting your thoughts in as we go along. Because I'm not as annoyed as I was yesterday about the Forest match. I'm still annoyed, but I'm just not as annoyed. But this is why I usually try to wait a day to talk about the match and give my reactions. So while we're all like not in our feelings anymore. So of course, we're going to talk today a little bit about the performance. We're going to take a look at what Ruben Amorim has had to say on the result. I've got my 3 thoughts on the match, as always. But maybe to balance it out, maybe to make like a negative, positive, negative sandwich after some of this crazy news, I am going to do one of my little mini scout reports before we start. So feel free to give your thoughts on my little scout report as we move on, because I want to talk a little bit about a player that we've been linked with, and Danny B has mentioned a couple times, and I've been watching him a little bit, and that is Anthony Malambo. So 19-year-old midfielder, plays for PSV. Very good, very physical, very energetic, really good passing, dribbling, reads the game well, very creative. I love this kid. He's just 19 years old, right? But he's been literally playing first-team football since he was 16. Made his debut at 16 for PSV. He's actually their youngest player ever at PSV. Came through the academy. We were linked with him earlier this week. Can play as an 8, can play as a 10. Very good off the ball as well. Like I said, puts in a shift. It reminds me a little of Ryan Gravenberch at Ajax, and what we've seen from him now at Liverpool. He had a really good spell in October. He had 3 goals in 2 matches in a row, including 2 goals against Benfica in the Champions League, which earned him man of the match. My issue with him so far is just a little bit of injuries, quite a few injuries for such a young player, which we've seen kind of be some downfall of some players in the past. So if he can shake those off, I'll be happy. But he gets in really good positions. He's in the top 20% for touches in the attacking area, progressive passes. His pass completion's good. His carries and his take-ons are very, very good. His shot creating actions are good. So I really like this young kid. Let me see what you guys are saying. Oh, Rich, I try to be positive, but I hit the wall. I wanted to hit something yesterday. It was embarrassing, but it was not a good result. We're going to talk about that, though, as well. Darko, we will regret forever. Trust me, we all know why. Everybody's showing the love. We've already got somebody. Box is already thrown out the Qatari option. Oh no, and Darko seems to agree here. So on players, looks like Rich says, I want us to rate other Premier League teams less risky. Less risky, perhaps, but also probably more expensive. You're going to get that tax as well. I think that there's a fine line. I think that, again, it's all about the right player. Like, if I had to choose now, I'd probably say it's a little, like you're saying, it's a little bit more of a sure thing and I think a lot of it is a little bit of recency bias in terms of we tend to watch some of these players a little bit more than other players. So I get that. Like, if I had to choose right now, like if money were an option, I would say go get like someone like João Gomez or something before you get someone from another league. I totally get it. But these are just little fun scout reports to shake up the monotony here. Box says, I feel like whoever we buy, largely they seem to regress to become error prone. I mean, dude, I've literally said this. We've said this about players. We've said this about managers. Now we're saying it about directors of football. It's just like there's like a weird like portal, like this plane of just mediocrity that as soon as you step through the friggin' door, you just lose all your powers. It's like that you guys have watched Space Jam, like they curse the pro players and they just become garbage. It's insane. And like Box says, yeah, it's been crazy post Fergie, like because Fergie and David Gill pretty much just dragged us through a lot. And they did it really in spite of the owners, honestly. And once they were gone, the owners and Woodward and everybody just had free reign, basically do what they want. They didn't address a lot of areas of the club that they needed to, whether it's stuff like the roof or even personnel on the pitch, and even just modernizing the club altogether in terms of just having a director of football, having a sports psychologist, all this stuff. Like, they just neglected it for so long. And that's really the operant term here is neglect. So, but we're going to move on to the match here because I want to know your guys' thoughts as we go along here. So what were your thoughts on team selection? So ahead of the match, Ruben Amorim claimed he's starting to get an idea of his best 11. I'm not entirely sure he actually does. Honestly, the starting 11 we saw yesterday was close to what I think our strongest 11 is right now with who we have at the club. I think that besides If Mizraoui had started over Dallo, I think that right now with who we have, that's probably our strongest starting 11. It's the midfield of who I think is going to be our midfield moving forward in terms of Ugarte and Mainu. Both of them are still young. Arguably our strongest back line right now. Bruno, obviously, I think that, and then Ahmad, obviously, on the wide end, and Højlund. I think that's probably one of the strongest 11s we're going to have right now. You could argue maybe Mount over Garnacho, but it is what it is on that. To me, it wasn't necessarily about the team selection in terms of the starting 11. To me, it was about some of the substitutions that really frustrated me. And mostly because, like I've said in the last couple matches, we are not in a position right now in the league at a club to just be making some of these rotations, making some of these decisions. We're down 3-2 yesterday, and we changed 2 center backs, and we take off Bruno. Like, that to me is just mind-boggling. I want you to think right now, if that had been Ten Hag instead of Amorim, would you guys be happy with that decision? Because everybody was freaking out when we took off Rashford and brought off Harry Maguire against Porto. One of the best players in the league in Bruno scored a goal on the day, and one of the few players who probably could have pulled something out of nothing to pull us back into that match, pull us back level maybe, and he gets pulled off, and it's super annoying. Amorim said after the match that Bruno was tired, but he also said before the match that Bruno doesn't get tired. So you got to help me understand what you can't have it both ways. Someone help me understand what's going on here. I don't want to go into too much detail on their opening goal, because if I start talking more about that right now, I'm going to get very frustrated. I'll save that for a couple minutes. But in terms of our opening goal, big up Rasmus Højlund for being exactly where a striker needs to be in these situations. He's following the play. He's on that penalty spot. Garnacho took that shot and put it right at the keeper. Thankfully, it bounced back out, and Højlund was there to just put it away. Well done, Bruno, for his goal, too. It was a really well-taken goal. He was moving away from goal, had to turn his body all the way over just to get it back on target. It was a really well-taken goal. But Bruno was also at fault, in my opinion, for Morgan Gibbs-White's goal, for playing a really poor pass to Lenny Yoro and losing the ball in a very dangerous area. How Morgan Gibbs-White gets that much time and space to get that shot away is beyond me. How Onana just let that go right by him is beyond me. I thought he was very poor for that goal. And I think he honestly should have done much better for Wood's goal, that header that kind of just floated back across the box. Onana has a very big issue when it comes to moving off his line. He just doesn't do it, and it's starting to really frustrate me. He's improved his shot stopping today, yesterday's gaff aside in this season, but his distribution's not been super great, and he doesn't come off his line. And you guys know that's what I like from my keepers. Like, have some control over your box. He's a big dude. He's the only one who can use his hands. Just come out and do it. I don't care who you take out. Just do it. I think, honestly, though, that Wood goal has a lot to do with Dallo, once again, not closing down Morgan Gibbs-White. If you go watch that goal again, Dallo is just about 10 yards away. And again, we've seen this like carbon copy over and over again coming off Dallo's side. He's 10 yards away from not closing down the man. And Gibbs-White has nothing but time and space to put that ball anywhere he wants. And when you've got one of the top scorers in the league sitting in the box, you cannot do that. It's super annoying. And on that goal too, Licha, what is Licha doing? Just leaning on that back post with just watching things happen. Like, Licha, sometimes his decision making in these situations really, really frustrates me. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think of that. Let me see what you guys say in the chat. Box says from 5th minute to 35th minute felt like we dominated. Force came into it with a few corners last 10 minutes of the first half. Yeah, we're going to talk about set pieces here in a second. Darko says it's perfect time to boo the players, show them their level. Yeah, we're going to talk about the players. As obviously we're talking about some of the match highlights at the moment. Box says Onana nearly gave away 4th Forest goal as well right after 30. Yeah, Onana did not have his best game yesterday. And on Onana, sticking with him for a second, what the actual fuck was he doing in the last couple minutes of stoppage time with that ball placement for that free kick? Killed literally 30 seconds. How many times did he have to reposition the ball? Like, what was he thinking? We're down a goal. We need a goal. And he wants to just waste time unnecessarily. For a 28-year-old keeper, yesterday was such a poor display from Onana. This guy was in a Champions League final a couple seasons ago, and he's a senior player at the club. And this is what we're seeing from him. Like, that is so annoying. Darko says, all the content creators praised Onana for his routine saves. To be fair, he has made more than just routine saves. But the shot that he let in yesterday from Gibbs White, that was just so fun. Now, to be fair to Gibbs White, he did strike it well. Some people say like it was not a good strike. It was actually a very good strike. He flashed across it. The ball had an outside bend, but at the same time, it was coming right at Onana. Like, what is he doing? He's just sitting down like he's rolling a ball back and forth with a child or something. It makes no sense to me. Box says, post-injury Licha hasn't got to his previous level. I think that Licha has been a bit up and down this season for sure, but honestly, on yesterday we were just so bad. A couple players quietly had some all right performances in terms of their numbers, but our defense yesterday was not great at all. Like, I think we were shit. We were pretty much on the ropes. I know somebody, I forget who it was now, said, from 5th minute to 35th minute we were fine. But the problem is, and we're going to talk about it, like, we didn't do anything. We had 72% possession on the day, but we didn't do anything with it really. 522 passes compared to Forest 153. But again, what did we do with it? We had more than twice as many shots on target. What did we do with them? Forest had 28% possession, an XG of only 0.69, only 3 shots on target, and they got 3 goals from it. It's a case of clinical versus not clinical, effective versus non-effective, making the most of your opportunities versus needing so many opportunities just to make something happen. If you can't tell, I'm not happy right now with the club. So you guys keep letting me know what you think. I'm going to go into a little bit of what Ruben Amorim has had to say on the match. He says it was a really tough game. We started really badly. The first play, we suffered a goal. They scored in difficult moments for us, so it was difficult to pass on the players the job we have to do. Again, game plan goes out the window when you concede within the first couple minutes, and we've seen it how many times from these players. When that happens, they start to freak out. They start to heads drop. They don't know what they're doing. They lose concentration. They just abandon all game plan, anything that they've learned, and they regress to the mean. They revert to type. It's not okay. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Amorim says we controlled the game, created some chances, and we tried to work something for the second half. Then we suffered 2 goals like that. It's really hard to help the players, to put calm in the players. The players have to take ownership of this. You can't do everything for them. You can't make them calm. You can't make them remember stuff. You as a manager, as a human being, you only have a certain, your role only goes so far. The players have to take responsibility for this kind of stuff. He said that they tried until the end with not a lot of quality, more heart than quality, but we couldn't do it. It's awful. It just really is a shit show. He says that we improved in the movement in the last third, especially in the beginning of the first half, but we lose the game, didn't have any situations to score, but we managed to have some combinations, especially if you see our first goal. Was the first goal a result of a combination? It looked more a result of Garnacho having tunnel vision, taking a shot, and then Højlund happened to be in the right spot. It's nice that we had multiple players in the third this time compared to Arsenal, where we were getting the ball in that position and we just couldn't do anything with it, but it just wasn't good enough altogether. So he was asked specifically about conceding from corners, which we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. I'll talk about that a little later on. He was asked about the team that he has. He says, of course, every day you learn a lot. The best team also depends on the opposition. I agree to an extent, but I think that he's yet to find his best core 11, which you really need to get hammered down quickly, or right now especially. He says you have to understand the opposition to put the right players with the right characteristics for every game. It's more just about FIFA. It's more just about which player is fast, which players got good aerial, which player is strong. It's more about mentality at this point. I think a lot of people, and I'm not saying I'm one of them, I think that when it comes to mentality, a lot of people would say that Scott McTominay probably had the best mentality of anybody at the club. And if Amorim goes on and on about mentality, like the decisions that the club is making, so I get it. It was a financial decision, but it's just, that's the example. How many players have that sort of fight in them right now? And he was asked, can he see what needs improvement? He says a lot. Every situation in the game, I can see that what we can improve as a team. It's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing as we know what to do. He was asked if he's convinced that they'll get it right. He says, of course, we have to. I think everybody here has experienced ups and downs in football. You have to continue your job, doing the same things, being really convinced of your way. I'm I'm convinced of that. It's hard to lose games. I know the public and the fans want to win. It's a long time without winning, without that feeling. We're in a long journey. So that's pretty much it. It was kind of a basic little presser, but let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. RSV, man, welcome. How are you this morning, my guy? He says, if this was Omar Barada leaving, that would have sent me over the edge. I do have mixed feelings about Ashworth leaving. He did recommend Southgate. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that probably play into this. The fact that if Ashworth had already been here, it'd be one thing. But the fact that INEOS, and they spent all that time bringing him to the club, and then they sack him 5 months later, it just doesn't look great, as we've said a couple times. RSV wants to know, did he resign or was he actually sacked? Well, the club says mutually agreement. We've seen that over and over again, and we kind of all know, like, mutual agreement doesn't really mean anything. This guy was basically told, what basically happened is, it sounds like he was the outlying opinion and perspective on a lot of various little things, and because of that, he kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. And it was one of those situations where, if you can't get on board with the vision, if you can't get on board with the Ruben Amorim reporting and things, like, then why are you here kind of a situation. So anyone's guess in terms, all we know is what the club has said. So let's move on a little bit to what were my thoughts on the match, because I have my thoughts. I want to know yours. So starting with number one, set piece shambles. You guys were asking a little bit about set pieces. I wanted to reserve my thoughts until we got to this point. So but my number one is set piece shambles. Again, goal within the first couple minutes from a set piece. What the actual fuck is the deal with our set piece defending? I guess there'd have to be some set piece defending to begin with to criticize. But seriously, what in the ass was that defending for Forest's first goal? What were we doing? No one makes an effort to get a head on that ball and clear it. It's been like this for many, many years. And how long does it take for the set piece coaches to come in and do something? I think Phil Jones, speaking yesterday, I think with Sky, had a comment about it as well. What did he say? He said, when we're talking about set pieces, I think we can be over analytical and go into so much detail until we're almost blue in the face. Ultimately, go and attack the ball. Be aggressive, get first contact on the ball. United didn't do that enough today. Yeah, exactly. I said that many, many times, and I've said this for years about us when it comes to defending these set pieces. Nobody attacks the set pieces. Nobody goes after that ball and does what they need to do. It's just annoying, man. And Amorim said he brought on Harry Maguire because of set pieces to control more on who was winning all the first balls, but we weren't. He says we were trying to win first and second balls. We don't win second balls. We just don't do that at United. It's just the way it is. It's freaking annoying. And Harry Maguire doesn't do anything else. He doesn't, on attacking corners, he doesn't do enough. Defending, he doesn't do enough. Harry Maguire is big and tall, but he's very passive on these set pieces. And again, it's been like this for years. We had Licha and Dallo marking Milinkovic on that corner, by the way. Even if you put Licha on Dallo's shoulders, they're not out jumping that guy on the corner. So why wasn't De Ligt marking him? Why was De Ligt wasn't marking anybody. Go back and watch that. He was literally marking space. And last I checked, space has never scored a goal. So what is De Ligt doing? The zonal marking thing needs to go. I'm done with zonal marking. I'm freaking annoyed. Was Amorim with any fault? We are gonna talk about Amorim again, because we've already spoken a little bit about some of these subs. We're gonna talk a little bit about Amorim in a second here. But Darko says, and why are top managers failing to solve the problems? It's a combination of a lot of things, I feel like the top managers have not been properly backed because the structure was not there for guys like Van Gaal and Moyes and Mourinho and Ollie. We just didn't have a structure. Now that we have a structure, Ten Hag it just started to fall apart. It is what it is. I said from the get-go that I could see Ten Hag getting some time, but the risk was always that he was here before INEOS, and so that's always a risk. It's kind of like players. Players who were here before a manager arrives are always at risk of not being included in the plans. It is what it is. It had to be a complete fresh start. That's what INEOS are now doing. We're going to see how it goes, because I know that there are a lot of people who watch French football who are very critical of the way INEOS have run Nice. They've done the same thing. They make a lot of snap decisions when it comes to managers and whatnot, and some of their player transfers have not been great either. So I wish I had an answer for you, Darko, on the reasons why. All we can do is talk about what's going on and give our reactions to things. And we have just as little information as everyone else, and so it is a lot of speculation, but it is a lot of perspective. But that's why we are here, to give opinions and share perspectives. So on the subject of corners, though, as I continue with my set piece shambles point, what will it take for a manager to finally see that Bruno's delivery on corners is shit? Someone else needs to take over at these corners, because this guy fails to beat the first man time and time and time again. It's unfortunate, too, because our first corner, that quick ball out to Ahmad, was actually very, very, very good. And we've had a couple of those in recent matches, right? But it seems like when we go down a goal, when the desperation sets in, when a couple things just don't end up working, and we just abandon any tactics after the first couple tries. We run out of ideas too easily. And again, we just revert to type. That's super, super, super annoying. Amorim was asked about the goals we've conceded from corners, and he said, of course, we were just focusing on that. And we had 2 days where we focused a lot on that, but they managed to score again, and it's hard for the team. The team felt it a little bit, and you can feel it. Everyone in the stadium feels that goal. I felt it, and I'm in freaking Michigan. He says you could put men on men with the biggest guy and the biggest guy of them, and then they block your biggest guy. So it doesn't really matter if you make man-to-man or zonal marking. We need to improve in that area. I'm sorry, but we got to do better. It's not about, as Phil Jones said, and I've said many times on these, it's not about physical size or strength. It's not about height. It's about mentality. Who has it in them to go and attack that ball? Who has it in them to say, yeah, they're marking me, but I don't care. I'm going to fight for the ball better. It's just an excuse to say, well, this guy's blocking me, so I didn't. That's an excuse. It's kicking the can down the road. It's shifting blame. It's deflecting. There's no excuse as a professional footballer defending a set piece. You go and attack the ball. You have to want it more. You have to want that ball away from your goal more than the attacker wants it in the goal. You have to. You can't wait around for someone else to take responsibility for that situation. You have to go and do it yourself. Darker wants to know, can't these players be trained to mark players for corners? We might still concede from corners in the future. I mean, we're always going to concede from corners. It's just, that's part of football. The problem at United is the reasons why we concede from corners. And it's not just a simple case of someone's taller and this and that. It's about who wants it more. Our players, because we can talk about the mentality. Where's the fight? The lack of fight that we see from the squad all over the pitch also includes the set piece defending. Nobody wants to do it. If you remember that Chelsea game from last season, where was the defending on those corners in those situations? No one wants to take responsibility. No one wants to step up. No one wants to face criticism for maybe making a mistake. I would rather somebody jump and miss the ball than what I'm seeing of people just not jumping. I would rather Dallo go actually an attempt to close down Morgan Gibbs-White and the ball still go in, rather than him standing off 10 yards and allowing the ball just to be put wherever he wants to. Like, I don't care if you make a mistake. I don't even care necessarily as much if we concede still in that moment. But what I'm seeing is just no one wants to take responsibility. No one's fighting. No one's taking the initiative. And that's why we're conceding in these situations. But you guys, let me know your thoughts on set pieces. I'm going to move on to my second point here. And that is just second best on the day. Just wherever you want to look at. I know someone said the momentum was a certain way between. It really wasn't, honestly. It really wasn't. And I'm going to break it down for you why. Like I said earlier, aside from our defenders, some of our players might have actually been think like you had decent numbers, but you wouldn't be able to tell from watching the performance itself. This is why statistics and the eye test need to work together, because you can look at a stat like pass completion. You guys know I hate pass completion almost as much as I hate clean sheets as a stat for keepers, by the way. And so you can look at something like pass completion and think that a player had a good match. So like take Lisandro Martinez, for instance, 93% pass completion, made the most passes in the match. You can look at that and say, awesome, way to go, Foot Mob, for letting me know that. You got to break it down. 26 of those passes were to De Ligt. 14 were to Onana. So half of his passes on the day were simply just passes to the two players that were closest to him. Pass completion is such a shit stat. He didn't have a good day altogether. If you look at the other numbers, 1 out of 3 ground duels, 1 out of 3 aerial duels, only 1 out of 4 long balls completed. Similar numbers to De Ligt, except De Ligt completed just 1 more duel. Overall, it was just a bad day at the office for the defense. It just is what it is. We were losing the ground duels. We were second best to those from De Ligt and Licha. Ugarte, 5 out of 10 ground duels. Mainu, 4 out of 8 ground duels. Ahmad, 5 out of 13 ground duels. Dalot, 6 of 9. Just not up for it all around when it comes to fighting to win the ball back, which is second best to everything. Again, mentality thing. Did the players just not hear what Amorim said about the lack of fitness? Did they not hear about people needing to want to have to fight like mad dogs? Like, do they need to sprint more? Did they not hear it? If they did hear it, they either just didn't listen or they're just incapable of doing it. Like Darko says, can they be trained? I don't know if they can. Darko says, how come even new players become so less motivated? I fear even Mazza will go cold after sometimes. I feel like that's a combination of two things. I think it's the culture in the dressing room. You come in and there's a culture of accepting a certain level, and that spreads. That's why players who are toxic need to go. I think it also is, there's a result to that, is when I think players can get very frustrated. They can get very disillusioned sometimes, not only with the performances, not only with the culture, but also just maybe overall with the club right now. And I think it's hard. Like it's not as simple as I just go out there and play football. It should be, but it's not, because they're human beings and they have emotions, they have reactions to things, they have opinions on things. So I think Maz is pretty professional. I think he's a hard worker. He's been one of our best players on the season. He's probably been one of the best signings we've had in years, one of the best players in the league right now, as far as I'm concerned. But I think it doesn't take long if things don't start turning around for players to start to get frustrated. Danny B, good morning, my guy. Yeah, dude, if you're just catching us, we started with the breaking news today. We're talking about the Arsenal match now, but the breaking news today, is Dan Ashworth has left the club. So Danny, you'll have to go back and watch some of the earlier video, my guy. But get your thoughts in now. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't yet. Subscribe if you are new. We are on the road to 2K. But Danny, we were talking right now about second best. I just rattled off some ground duel stats, and they don't make for very happy reading. We talked about set pieces already, and so it's a bit of a shit show. And as far as second best goes, to answer somebody's question earlier, who asked about that, Dark Crow. Yeah, to answer your question, man, some of this criticism in terms of being second best does go towards Amorim as well. It was because it was disappointing to see us play right in the Nottingham Forest's hands. I said in the preview, if you guys remember, I told you they have a habit of, like Liverpool did against us early in the season, of putting a line of 4 men in between our defense and in our midfield to make it hard to break through. They like to cut off those passing lanes. They like to force us into wide positions where they start pressing with diamonds and triangles, and they exactly what they did to us yesterday. We played right into it. Then they were happy to sit in a 4-4-2 and make themselves hard to break down, which is exactly what I said they would do in my preview. And they know that we're shit at set pieces. Again, we've yet to address that problem with our defending. Again, seeing a pattern here, and like I said the other day, this doesn't, to me, read like there's any sort of opposition analysis from Ruben Amorim and his staff. I just don't see a plan there. He talks about making team selection based on the opposition, but I didn't see any sort of tactical adjustment to adjust for the opposition. It's very frustrating. Again, I'm not Amorim out. I'm not calling him a flop. I'm not saying he's a crap coach. I'm just calling it like I see it. And if I can sit here in Michigan with 0 coaching experience and take 5 minutes on the internet and see exactly what Forest are going to do, why can't we do it? Why are we playing right into their hands? Why are we second best to everything? Why are we still so crap at defending set pieces? It's super, super annoying. And then what were the subs going to do coming into that? We're down. We need a goal. Forest are going to sit back. Again, you can't bring Marcus Rashford on in that situation. He's not going to do anything. He needs space to run into. He's been benched the last couple matches, which is fine if you're not going to start him. Like, it is what it is. The only other option there is Garnacho. And what is Garnacho going to do? He's the same player as Rashford, basically. I don't really know what Mason Mount was going to do, because so far all I've seen from Mason Mount is a lot of pressing and then a couple of good link-up plays against Bodo Glimt for like 10 minutes in the second half. Don't know what Xerxes is going to do, because he came on and had another just all right kind of bare minimum performance. He just didn't do enough. Then wants to know why Ashworth was sacked. I mean, no one really knows the exact reasons why. There's a lot of speculation. Like a quick recap, what we talked about. There were a lot of rumors that he and Omar Barada just butted heads from the get-go. There's a lot of rumors that he pushed hard to keep Erik ten Hag, which Sir Jim is not happy with. And so that he wanted Gareth Southgate to be very English focused. And there's a lot of these rumors that he's the one kind of like outlying voice amidst this whole recruitment team. And so when that happens, when you're kind of the one voice of opposition, when you're not seeing eye to eye with everyone else, you are the one who's going to be kind of let go. It's just the way it is. And so the frustrating thing for me, Danny, is that we spent so much time trying to get Dan Ashworth. He's only been here 5 months, and now we're already sacking him. And now we already have to look at directors of football, because we need a director of football. Is this going to hurt our January business? What is this going to mean for us? And Danny, you did miss my mini scout report on Anthony Malambo, by the way. So you'll have to go back and watch that. But again, second best on the day, set pieces, tactical approach, ground duels, substitutions. It just wasn't good. We played right into their freaking hands. Darko says, Amorim's in-game management seems poor, as he's not doing anything tactical, but just throws substitute players and hopes for the best, just like Ten Hag did. I think part of it for me is, and Amorim's kind of hinted at this, is that there's very little training right now with little time in between matches. So he's trying to learn about the players, and he's trying to basically experiment with things in matches, which I get from a circumstantial standpoint. He has no choice, but at the same time, I don't like it from a tactical standpoint. We're not in a position in the Europa and not in a position in the league to be taking these risks. I would rather he stick with the strongest 11, the players who are performing, and then try to get up by a goal or two and then start doing it. I don't like how many changes I've seen from him. Yesterday, that starting 11 was about as close as you're going to get, barring like Nomer Zraoui starting and maybe Garnacho starting. But we don't, again, what are the options? It just is what it is. So I get it. I'm not going to be hyper critical in terms of extrapolating that into a longer, like a more large scale opinion of Amorim yet. But based on what I've seen in some of these situations, it's very, very frustrating. But Danny says, what a waste of time and money on Ashworth. It's looking like it. Thankfully, we didn't spend a ton on Ashworth. I mean, we only spent a couple million to get him in, so it's not bad. But again, it's more about the optics of the decision itself, especially in juxtaposition of the result and with some of the other decisions that have been happening with INEOS so far this season, from Ten Hag extension to then sacking him to the ticket prices and now this. It's just not a good look overall. Moving on to my third point. We can't ignore January. We just can't. Now, some of this might have been shaken up with the news that came this morning with Dan Ashworth leaving, but we can't ignore the January window. This is going to sound like a knee-jerk reaction. It's going to sound like I'm just throwing my hands up like, these players are shit. Sack them all. That's not. We've been talking about this for weeks. To quote a man who was unfairly sacked, open heart surgery is needed. If we don't do anything in January, it's a joke. The majority of the squad just isn't good enough. We absolutely need to look at the January transfer window. We need to find a way, find the funds, find something to strengthen this team. We need creativity, we need energy, we need dynamism. We need players. We don't need players who just shoot. We don't need players who just play long balls. We need players who, again, are creative, have energy. They have footballing IQ. They're technical, like guys like Mizraoui. They have a strong mentality, and players who fight for the badge without shriveling up if they make a mistake or if they receive some criticism. We need players who are just professional. January is difficult. Again, like I've said, both for tempting clubs to sell, but also because we are in a bit of a financial pickle. Now, again, we just cost ourselves a few million by sacking a director of football. But that was the point of the other video the other day on bargain January transfer deals that we should be looking at. I did put a link for that in the description if you want to go hear my thoughts on some of these bargains we should be looking at in January. Not necessarily all to bring in this month, but ahead of time. There are several free agents in there. We need help in midfield for sure because we're losing that battle. We need ideas and creativity and selflessness in the final third. So we need another number 10 or another wide player to get up there and do something. INEOS and their team need to find some money in some way to get Amorim some help. They extended Ten Hag's contract, spent money on players, spent money to sack Ten Hag, spent money to bring in Amorim mid-season, but now they need to give Amorim some help, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot in a lot of ways. If they don't do anything in January, do you think that they're kind of giving him a free pass, that they're just kind of letting him experiment, letting him do stuff? They've kind of written off the season. They're kind of hoping, like, I don't like this idea. It's still, we haven't even played every team yet in the league. Like, we can't write off the season this early. I know we're in 13th. We still have a lot of points to play for. We're still not that far off of getting up there. But I think that we do need to strengthen. And I don't just mean buying players as well. I also mean we need to start just dropping players that aren't performing. It's addition by subtraction, right? If a player is hurting us more than he helps us, then he needs to be dropped. Simple as that. That's just the way it is. And so it shouldn't be taking this long to figure out who's good, who's not, who works, who doesn't. It shouldn't be taking this long to figure out what the best 11 is. And honestly, we should have already had a plan for January, beginning of the season. Like I said, I know that might have shifted a little bit with Dan Ashworth being sacked this morning. But if he was the outlying voice and he wasn't getting on board with the plan, then there should already have been a plan to not be on board with, if that makes sense. We should already have an idea. Barada and everybody should be already looking at it. I know Nipan is visiting, been linked with Maston Tuono. Two players that are going to be out of season already. They could come in and instantly cause a bit of chaos. They could create some competition. They could bring something different. I think that something needs to happen. I'm waffling a bit, but something needs to happen here. We haven't put together 2 wins in the league at all this season. It's very, very frustrating. This result yesterday puts us in 13th. Forest jump up to 5th place right now. Again, I'm not panicking about relegation battles or anything. I know some people are, but I think we can all agree right now top 4 is a complete fantasy. It's not going to happen. And I'm not looking at mathematics. Some people will say, well, mathematically it's possible. I don't care about mathematics because mathematically every team above us has to continually do worse than us for the rest of the season for us to make that jump. I don't think we're going to be relegated. I don't even think we're going to finish bottom half in the table, but I think that like 6th, 7th, 8th is probably, 6 is probably a dream. 7th, 8th is probably where we're going to finish. On the result, so this is Forest's first win at Old Trafford in 30 years. So again, the season of giving, we like to give out these records. Vivell is, oh yeah, I forgot we had Vivell lying around. He was the guy I worked with the Red Bull group and stuff. So Danny says I must put in an application. Yeah, go do it, man. You and I go in and change things around. I listed a couple of options out there. Michael Zorc, Luis Campos. We could bring Ragnick back. But we do need to do something. We host Victoria Plzeň in the Europa League on Thursday, which we're going to preview later on this week. Then we get Man City in the league. Man City just dropped points against Crystal Palace. They did not look good. And then Rico Lewis got himself suspended. So they're going to have no Rico Lewis. They've already got a lot of other injuries right now. So but given where we are, we're probably going to drop points to them as well because City will probably still beat us. They also played Juventus this week in the Champions League. So maybe if we're lucky, Juve will land another blow to City's season and Pep will unravel even further. But we'll see. I think we get Spurs after that as well. So just the hits just keep on coming. So we need to start putting together results. We'll probably see. We're going to preview a lot of those matches later on this week. But big up Anthony Elanga, by the way, for his tribute to Kath Phipps, who obviously passed away earlier this week. Longtime receptionist at the club. But Anthony Elanga had a rest in peace Kath shirt on under his jersey. So big up Anthony Elanga. Once a Red, always a Red in many ways. So appreciate that. But you guys let me know your thoughts on the match. Those are my thoughts on the match. big up everybody who stopped by today. Sports Predictions, Box, Danny B, RSV, United TV, and Rich, thank you for stopping by. Again, hit that like button if you haven't yet done so. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are very, very close to 2K subscribers. Get your thoughts in if you weren't able to catch the live. I want to know your thoughts on the match. Let me know your thoughts on Dan Ashworth news this morning, and we'll go from there. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Enjoy your Sunday. It is nice and sunny out today, so I'm going to go walk the dogs. And take it easy. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.